Welcome, everybody. Let's see, we got a little video here, a little PowerPoint, a little Prezi, or not. Amazing, yes, okay, cool. Hey everybody, I'm Josh Linkner. I'm thrilled to be here today to share a Mackinac moment, not to be confused with a TED Talk because that would infringe on various copyrights. But to begin, I have a question for you. What do you think that these organizations have in common? They're gone, they're suffering, they failed to reinvent. And on top of that, the thing that really bothers me is that at one point, each of these companies was the dominant player in their field. They were the leader. And our responsibility in both our communities and our companies is to reinvent from a point of success. In other words, proactively do it before we end up on some guy's logo slide in his presentation. So accordingly, our new job goes beyond whatever your business card says. Certainly we're policymakers, we're executives, we're community developers, but we also need to be disruptors, or innovators, or artists, or entrepreneurs. No matter what size organization you lead, it's incumbent on us to be proactive in driving the change that we seek, rather than having it thrust upon us. You know, think about the world that we live in today. Today we live in a world of dizzying speed, exponential complexity, and ruthless competition. And if anything, what the downturn of the past has taught us, and what the new resurgence is teaching us, is that we can no longer rely on the models of the past and expect to win. Today, an entirely new set of skills is needed in order to achieve. And the other thing that's happened is that we've learned that success isn't a permanent condition, something that you crack the code to the safe once and enjoy the spoils forever. Instead, success happens at a moment in time in the context of many external factors. So again, as leaders, our job is to be disruptive at the very point of success, rather than waiting for a downturn to occur. So just yesterday, coincidentally, I launched a book. It came out globally and on this very topic about reinvention. And the folks at the Detroit Regional Chamber are nice enough to buy 150 copies, so I'll be doing a signing at 6 for anyone who wants a free copy. It's sort of like a first come, first served deal. But I wanted to share some big ideas with you today about this concept of proactively driving disruption before you become disrupted. In doing the research for the book and getting to talk to many people at all levels of public and private sector, I found three obsessions that entrepreneurs, that reinventors do on a regular basis. And I thought we'd take a quick look at those three today. The first one is that they are obsessed with shedding the past. In the city of Detroit, if you think about all the challenges that we've had over the last 30 or 40 years, it's easy to cling to that past, isn't it? We can talk about longing for the days gone by and pointing fingers and assessing blame. But finally, our region is gaining traction again, not because we're busy clinging to the past, but because we finally let go. And new things, like was just discussed on this panel, are emerging. In our case, I'm privileged to run Detroit Venture Partners with two partners, Dan Gilbert and Brian Hermelin, where we're investing in tech startups in the city of Detroit. And certainly there's an opportunity to earn money, but more importantly, there's an opportunity to make a difference. And our theory is that by backing passionate entrepreneurs, we'll create jobs, urban density, and hope. And once again, reestablish Detroit as a beacon of entrepreneurship and innovation, the same way it was 100 years ago. This type of thinking only occurs when you're willing to let go. We did some fun things with the space, by the way. This is the Madison building, which you may have heard of. Dan purchased this building and made a significant investment. We tried to make it like ground zero of entrepreneurship in Detroit. And you can see by creating an inspiring environment, in turn, it creates inspiring work and allows people to feel inspired. Doesn't look like the kind of thing you'd normally see in the city of Detroit, which is exactly why we're so excited about it. And it's exactly what all of us need to do in both our personal lives as well as our businesses, letting go of the past. The second obsession of reinventors is the desire to defy tradition. One of my favorite examples of this is a guy named Masoud Hassani. So Masoud Hassani grew up just outside of Kabul, Afghanistan. And he witnessed things as a kid that none of us should ever have to see. Many of those challenges were driven by landmines. Turns out that landmines are a huge issue in the world. There's nearly 110 million of these killing machines worldwide, killing 20,000 people a year, injuring and maiming many times more. So Masood Hassani said, I'm going to do something about this when he was a kid. Didn't know what, but he knew he was going to take this on. Also as a kid, he would notice as he looked out across the desert, tumbleweed gently blowing across the desert surface. Years later, he would combine these insights into something really powerful. So the traditional way, if you were committed to landmine change, what would you do? You'd get a job at a landmine removal company, you'd work your way up, maybe by the end of your career, you'd make a little teeny incremental change. Instead, Masood Hassani defied tradition. So it turns out that landmine removal has been basically the same since the 1960s. It's expensive, it's dangerous, and it's not all that effective. So what he did is he invented something really special. He took a creative leap. And that leap was inventing something called the mine kafan, which in native language means mine exploder. So there's about 100 bamboo rods, and at the end of each is a clay disc. So like the tumbleweed he saw as a kid, these things gently blow across the desert floor. They're light enough to be propelled by the wind, but heavy enough to detonate landmines. The result, significantly less dangerous, far more effective, and it's over 100 times less expensive than traditional means. The idea was so compelling and so powerful that it's now on permanent display at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. That is the power of defying tradition. There's so many of us say to ourselves, well, not in my industry, we couldn't effectuate such change. For example, maybe you run an airline. And airlines, as we know, are nearly the same. They're almost indistinguishable. Unless you happen to be in South Africa and you happen to be flying Kulula Airlines, you might notice a slight difference. So the folks at Kulula had the guts, the courage to stand out. They said, we can't reinvent the plane itself, but let's reinvent the experience. Let's create something that customers want to talk about. Let's make sure that we're standing out as a category of one instead of blending into the pack. There's no way that you can confuse one of their flights with a Delta flight. The other thing that you can't confuse is their financial performance. As this entire industry had been in turmoil for years, Kulula has enjoyed double and triple-digit growth every year for the last 10 years. So the point is that when you're willing to defy tradition, you can start to allow your creativity to create remarkable solutions that people are willing to talk about. The third big obsession of reinventors is the concept of getting scrappy. So I've been an entrepreneur, for those I haven't met, my whole life. I've started, built, and sold 4 tech companies over the last 20 years. And people often ask me, what's it like to be an entrepreneur? Like, what does that actually feel like? What do you do on a daily basis? I never had a good answer for it until recently. Actually, the insight came from reading the book from our friends at Method. And they have a saying that really hit me. And the best way I can describe being an entrepreneur, it's basically like you're in the 1980s show MacGyver. So for those that haven't remembered the show, this guy would find himself in an impossible situation. But instead of whining and complaining about all the resources that he didn't have, he made do with what was at his disposal, which in his case was usually duct tape and a paper clip. That's what entrepreneurship is all about. And in fact, sometimes having fewer resources allows you to create more indelible and creative ideas. One fun example of that, there's a woman named Jessica Mindray, and she had a jewelry company that wasn't really doing all that well. So she reads an article, and the article was about a program in Newark, New Jersey, run by Mayor Cory Booker. And the program was to get guns off the street. He'd pay cash for guns, no questions asked. Anyway, the program was so successful, it created 2 new problems. One problem was that they ran out of money to keep buying all the firearms. The second problem is that storing these things became a real safety issue. So Jessica could have just glazed past this article, went on with her jewelry business that wasn't doing well. But instead, she got scrappy. She started to think like MacGyver. She became a reinventor. So she gets on the phone, she calls up Mayor Cory Booker with an idea. The idea was to take the firearms, melt them down, and make jewelry out of them. So what you're looking at is a bracelet from her Caliber line. And the serial number that's proudly displayed is the serial number of the original firearm that was taken off the streets of Newark, New Jersey. What happens? This company takes off like a rocket. She can't make these things fast enough. And meanwhile, she's donating 20% of the proceeds back to the city of Newark in order to get more guns off the street. So it's an opportunity. She used her creativity, reinventive spirit, to both do well and do good. And that's a profound opportunity that all of us in Michigan share. Speaking of that, there's a company, and full disclosure, that we funded, but they're doing something that's created, and I thought was kind of neat. So this company in downtown Detroit is called Circus. They do inspired learning. They do tech training and entrepreneurial and business training. So they're a little startup. They're trying to get off the ground. So they're thinking, how can they get more customers, and also how can they make a difference? So following the model of Tom's Shoes and others, they launched a program called Buy One, Train One, where when company executives send someone to Circus to learn how to do software development or build an Android iPhone app, that type of thing, they donate a training program to a kid in the city of Detroit to help them gain meaningful skills so they can make a real difference in the community. The program is off to a great start, but again, it's a creative approach to solving a real-world problem. One other quick example before we wrap up, these are very brief Mackinac moments, is DHL. So DHL was thinking about how do they compete on a global basis with giant brands like FedEx and UPS. So they had to get scrappy. Even though they're a larger company, getting scrappy is a mindset. It doesn't matter if you are big or small, it's an approach to their work. So to take on FedEx and UPS, here's what they did. Check this brief video out.
For that purpose, giant packages were taped all over with thermoactive foil and cooled down below the freezing point. In this way, the competitors picked up a black package that transformed back at temperatures above freezing and delivered the message in the most beautiful colors to addresses in the city that were not that easy to find. After all, they were paid reasonably. The result, an innovative way to communicate. And everyone played along. Well, almost everyone. Thank you very much.
So since they couldn't compete with dollars, they competed with their imagination. And that's my challenge to you folks. We have so many problems in our businesses and our communities. Instead of just trying to use your instincts and throwing resources or money or people at it, let's throw our creativity at it. Let's throw the spirit of reinvention at it. And we can create incredible things that really make a difference. So when I think about these logos just getting you back grounded, that is both our opportunity and our threat. Each of these companies were displaced by new entrepreneurs that had the courage to see things differently, that let go of the past in order to win and create something fresh. I'll argue that someday a company will put you out of business. Might as well be you. That's the opportunity that we share both in our companies and our communities in this great state. I'll tell you, when I think about what's happening in Detroit, there's so much energy that's all coming together right now. And I truly believe that this 5-year stretch will be studied for decades as the greatest turnaround story in American history. Each of us in this room, each of us in our community, have the opportunity to leave our fingerprints on this. Who gets to do that? What a privilege. What an amazing opportunity for each of us to leave a legacy that goes far beyond a bank statement. So what I would encourage you to do as you think about the content that you're hearing today from other speakers and as you connect with friends and colleagues throughout the next couple days, let's use this as a jumping off point, a springboard, to allow our imagination to soar, to let the creativity that each of us have come up to the surface and deploy it in our organizations. Let's use this as an opportunity to stick our finger in the eye of conventional wisdom. And let's use this as an opportunity to seize the gigantic forces that are outside these doors for each of us in our communities and our companies. With that, thank you so much.